Don't judge a book by its cover. This is a saying that we have heard many times, and it reminds us that the outside of things and people doesn't always reflect what's inside. And this is sometimes excellent advice. But when it comes to books, and movies as well, judging by the cover is actually recommended. You might be asking, why should we judge our reading materials based on its outside appearance? Well, one very good reason is that there are entire industries that exist solely to design books and covers that grab your attention and give clues as to what's inside. It just makes sense, really. A book's cover is its most immediate advertising, and the publishers and booksellers want you to be able to find books that you will enjoy. And by signaling what the book is about, by the outside, they're helping you find something that you will like. They're also helping you to avoid books that might not be to your taste. So looking at these covers for the novel Moby Dick, if you don't like whales and you don't like the ocean and you don't like action adventure, maybe you don't want to read Moby Dick. This cover uses an illustration to reinforce the title and to hint at the possible mood of the book. The picture of a girl falling through a blue field and the arrangement of the words in the title suggest a downward motion through the sky. As the title is The Girl Who Fell from the Sky, the title and the arrangement of the cover art are reinforcing each other. This cover art wouldn't work well with another title. For example, Murder on the Orient Express. And a different picture, maybe of a girl standing still in a field, wouldn't have the same impact as this picture of a girl that looks as though she's falling through the sky. Something else worth noticing about this cover are at the top. We can see that it has won a prize and that the author Barbara Kingsolver has written a recommendation of it. Now, most people probably aren't familiar with the Bellwether Prize for Fiction, but you might consider that any book that's won a prize is probably a better read than one that hasn't. And if you're a fan of the author Barbara Kingsolver, or maybe you're familiar with the kinds of books that she writes, a recommendation by her might go a long way toward convincing you to read this book. The cover of Into the Night Wood by Dale Bailey also reflects the words of that title, specifically the word wood. The cover art is also conveying a sense of dread, or perhaps mystery, as the small lone figure of a girl stands in a circle created by the trees. And since it's a night wood, such a haunting or ominous picture seems like it should be appropriate to the title. Looking a bit more closely at the cover, we see something that perhaps isn't very obvious, but maybe it registered with our brains subconsciously, or maybe we thought we saw something and it enticed us to look more closely, and that is that the trees have faces. So with this, the artist is letting us know in obvious and not so obvious ways that there are creepy elements to this story. Sometimes the title itself, or more specifically the subtitle, can also give you hints about the kind of book you're looking at. Obviously the title is going to give us an idea, but the subtitle is there to convey even more information. Usually it will be something such as, this is a mystery, or it's part of this series. It might say that it's a novel, so that you don't confuse it with a nonfiction book, or it might say that it's a memoir, so that you know it is a personal account, or it might say that it's poems or short stories. But what does it tell you when the title isn't the headliner of the book cover? If the name of the author is bigger than the words of the title, you can be pretty sure that the author is considered popular or well-known. The designers of the cover are counting on that name to sell the book more effectively than titles or artwork, blurbs, or prizes. For example, if you're a fan of Danielle Steele, a book titled Blessing in Disguise in itself might not interest you, but knowing that one of your favorite authors wrote a book is enough to convince you to pick it up from the shelves. Same thing goes for an author such as James Patterson or Fern Michaels. Their fan bases are most interested in who wrote this book. Even if you aren't familiar with the author's name on the book, Maybe you don't read that genre. When you see the author's name featured so prominently on the cover, that lets you know that they are a well-known author in that genre. For example, science fiction. Maybe you don't read science fiction, but you think you might like to try it, but you're not sure who's a good author. Looking at these three book covers, you can see that the name of the author is the biggest thing, or pretty big, on the cover. And so that lets you know that these are well-known authors in science fiction and they might be worth giving a try. Another common feature of book covers are blurbs. Blurbs are those short quotations that you often see on books. They might be from book reviewers, other authors, celebrities, experts in a particular field, or they might be from different media outlets, maybe a newspaper, a magazine, or a TV station. This cover of Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn is covered with 1- and 2-word descriptions from magazines and newspapers. Both the fact that the quotations are short and that they use words such as sinister and razor sharp give us an impression of a book that is fast-paced. Maybe it has some scary elements, and maybe there are some plot twists along the way. But you should always be a little cautious when you're using these blurbs as recommendations for a book. As we can see from this cover of Gone Girl, there are 3 dot ellipses, ... between some of the words. And that lets us know that there were more words in between, but they've been left out. And while the words may have been equally complimentary of the book, we don't know that for certain. They could have been uncomplimentary. You can see another common feature of book covers in this slide, also from the cover of Gone Girl. When movies are based on novels, not only might the movie be advertised that it's based on a popular book, the book can be advertised as inspiration for the movie. So maybe you saw the movie Gone Girl, starring Ben Affleck, and now you're interested in reading the book. Perhaps the quickest way to assess whether you want to read a book is to allow the visual genre signals of the cover to guide your decision. Romance novels are an excellent example of how to read the subtle, or not so subtle, genre signals on a book cover. If there's a photo of a man and woman gazing into each other's eyes, it's a good bet you're looking at a romance novel. If the man's chest is bare, your chances are even better. If the woman seems to be having some problems keeping her dress where it ought to be, and if there's a lot of hair flowing about, you're practically guaranteed a steamy romance. If, on the other hand, the ladies on the cover are wearing bonnets, now you're looking at what is variously described as Amish, Christian fiction, or maybe even inspirational novels. Other indicators of this genre are men in straw hats, buggies on the cover maybe, very tidy and nice looking farmhouses, and maybe women dressed in what might be called biblical clothing. If action adventure is what you're in the mood for, look for a man in a suit on the cover. He will usually be seen either from the back or in silhouette. Often there will be an explosion as well. You might see guns, helicopters, planes, trains, fast cars. Transportation in general seems to be a clue to an action story. The titles often are short and attention-grabbing as well. Knives, on the other hand, are more often seen on the covers of mystery books, particularly murder mysteries. Sometimes the knives might have blood dripping from them to emphasize that blood will be shed in this book. Pictures of graveyards, maybe the outlines of dead bodies that are usually drawn by the police, maybe messy rooms that look like someone has abandoned them. These are also clues to mysteries and murder mysteries. Cozy mysteries, on the other hand, will often have brightly colored covers, and usually the images or illustrations will look more as though they've been drawn rather than photographed. Cozy mysteries are often part of a series, which will usually be noted on the cover, and the title usually involves a pun or some sort of wordplay to convey that this is a mystery, but it's a little bit lighter than your traditional hard-boiled murder mystery. If science fiction is more to your taste, you probably know to look for spaceships, robots, numbers, machines, and computer-inspired graphics as an indication of your preferred genre. The future is often depicted as dystopian in science fiction, so the graphics are usually going to be darker colors. You might see ruined parts of cities or other landscapes. A lot of science fiction will have elements of action and adventure as well, so dynamic images like movement and explosions are often also used. While the genres of science fiction and fantasy are often closely linked or sometimes even overlap, there are differences in the cover art of the genres that can guide you to let you know whether this is more of a science fiction or more of a fantasy book. Dragons are a big giveaway, as are other mythological creatures such as elves or dwarves, orcs. Castles are another clue, as are people dressed in capes or other sorts of clothes that you might think of as being historical. And if one of the people on the cover is brandishing a sword or maybe getting ready to shoot an arrow, that's almost certainly a fantasy novel. If you have examined the cover of this book and you still aren't quite sure whether you want to give it a try or not, you can open it up. And by reading the first and last paragraphs, get a taste of what's inside. It can also give you an idea of the writing style. Are the sentences and paragraphs long or short? You might not like run-on sentences. Are there a lot of dialogue? Or maybe the author is more descriptive. He wants to set a mood and just tell you what people are doing rather than have them speak. Sometimes all it takes is reading the first sentence to let you know whether this book is a keeper or not. One of the greatest joys of being a reader is finding an author or a series that you love. But sometimes reading a series out of order can spoil the endings, or maybe just the books don't make sense out of order. But by flipping to the series information page of your favorite book, and it's usually toward the front, you can easily see at a glance how many books are in a particular series, where in the series the book you're looking at falls, and whether or not the author has written other series or books you might be interested in. These are just a few ways to use the outside of a book to help you judge whether or not you're going to like what's inside. In conclusion, the old saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover," is not always good advice for readers browsing the shelves. Libraries and bookstores, online retailers, publishers, they all want to help you find books you're actually going to like, and they use book covers as an advertising opportunity to help you. So my advice is to go ahead and judge that book by its cover. That's why they have them.